There's a study from Harvard that tracks 724 people over 85 years. It's the longest study on human happiness ever conducted. They tracked rich people, poor people, doctors, lawyers, factory workers, and after 85 years, they found the single biggest predictor of happiness. It wasn't money. It wasn't fame. It wasn't career success. It was having control over your life. This is Chapter 7 of the Psychology of Money Freedom, and it might be the most important chapter in the entire book. Morgan makes a bold claim in this chapter. He says the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Not a Lamborghini, not a penthouse, not a Rolex. The ability to control your time. Think about that. Really think about it. Because we've been trained to believe that money is about stuff, about buying things, about showing the world you've made it. But Morgan argues that the real value of money, the thing that actually makes people happy, has nothing to do with stuff. It's about freedom. The freedom to choose, the freedom to say no, the freedom to walk away from things that drain you and walk toward things that fulfill you. He writes, and this is one of the most powerful lines in the book, controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. Not returns, not compound interest, not portfolio growth. Time. Because you can always make more money. You cannot make more time. And what good is $1 billion if someone else controls every hour of your day? This chapter asks a question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. What are you actually working for? Let's look at our first story, the paradox of the high-earning professional. Morgan describes something in this chapter that I think every single person watching this will recognize. Imagine a person who works 80 hours a week. They earn an incredible salary. Let's say they're a surgeon, a corporate lawyer, or an investment banker. They make more money in a month than most people make in a year. But they can't choose when they wake up. They can't choose when they eat lunch. They can't take a Tuesday afternoon off to watch their kids' school play. Their calendar is owned by someone else. Their phone buzzes every 3 minutes. Their vacations get canceled because of emergencies. Now imagine another person. They run a small online business. They make a fraction of what the surgeon makes, but they wake up without an alarm. They work when they want. They take a month off every year to travel. They pick their kids up from school every single day. Who's richer? If you measure by salary, then the surgeon. If you measure by freedom, then the small business owner. And Morgan's argument is that freedom is the metric that actually matters for happiness. Because here's what the research shows. The American Psychological Association, the Harvard study I mentioned, study after study, they all reach the same conclusion. People's sense of well-being is tied more to having autonomy and control than to having a high income. A person earning $75,000 with full control over their schedule is, on average, happier than a person earning $500,000 who is chained to their desk. Let's look at our second story, the Fisherman Parable. An American investment banker is on vacation in a small coastal village in Mexico. He sees a fisherman dock his small boat with a few fish. The banker asks, "How long did it take you to catch those?" The fisherman says, "Just a couple of hours." The banker asks, "Why don't you fish longer and catch more?" The fisherman says, "I have enough to feed my family. In the afternoon, I take a nap. In the evening, I play guitar with my friends and drink wine with my wife." The banker says, "Listen, I have an MBA from Harvard. Here's what you should do. Fish longer, catch more, save up, buy a bigger boat, then buy a fleet, then open a processing plant, then move to New York and run a corporation. In 15 to 20 years, you'll be worth millions." The fisherman asks, "And then what?" The banker smiles. "Then you can retire to a small coastal village, fish in the morning, nap in the afternoon, and play guitar with your friends in the evening." He was already living the life that the banker was working 20 years to achieve. That's the trap. We sacrifice freedom now for the promise of freedom later, and often, later never comes. Now let me show you how this is playing out right now in real time across the world. The Great Resignation and the global shift toward freedom. Starting in 2021, something unprecedented happened. Millions of people across the United States, Europe, Australia, and parts of Asia started quitting their jobs voluntarily. It was called the Great Resignation. In the US alone, over 47 million people quit their jobs in 2021, another 50 million in 2022, And here's what was strange. Many of these people weren't quitting because they were broke or desperate. They were quitting high-paying, prestigious, stable jobs. Lawyers, consultants, software engineers at Google and Meta, bankers at Goldman Sachs, people who, on paper, had made it. When researchers surveyed these people and asked why, the number one answer wasn't salary. It wasn't bad management. It wasn't benefits. It was, I want more control over my life. COVID had forced everyone to work from home, and for the first time, millions of people experienced what it felt like to control their own time, to not commute 2 hours a day, to eat lunch with their families, to work in their own rhythm instead of being monitored from 9 to 5. And when companies started demanding they return to the office, people said no. Not just no, they quit. Take the tech industry. In 2022 and 2023, companies like Amazon, Apple, and Google announced strict return-to-office mandates. And what happened? Some of their best employees left. Not for more money, many took pay cuts to work at smaller, remote-first companies. A senior engineer at Amazon making $350,000 a year quit to join a 20-person remote startup for $200,000. When asked why, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I realized that no salary was worth losing the ability to have breakfast with my daughter every morning. That's freedom in real life. That engineer did the math, not the financial math, the life math. And he realized that control over his mornings was worth more than $150,000 a year. And it wasn't just employees. A whole generation of young people started building their careers around freedom from the start. Freelancing, content creation, remote consulting, small e-commerce businesses. Not because these paths are easier or more lucrative, but because they offer something a corporate job doesn't: autonomy. Now, I want to be clear. Not everyone has the privilege of quitting. Not everyone can afford to take a pay cut for freedom. Many people are working 2 jobs just to survive. And that's exactly Morgan's point. The goal of building wealth shouldn't be to buy a nicer car. It should be to reach a point where you have choices, where you can say no to work you hate, where you can take a break without fear. That is what money is for. This chapter wrecked me because I realized that for years, I was chasing the wrong definition of success. I wanted a higher salary, a better title, a bigger apartment. And every time I got one of those things, I felt good for about 2 weeks, and then the goalpost moved. Sound familiar? But what this chapter made me realize is that every upgrade came with a cost I wasn't measuring. The higher salary came with longer hours. The better title came with more responsibility and more stress. The bigger apartment came with a bigger EMI that made me more dependent on my paycheck, not less. I was getting richer on paper, but I was getting less free in reality. After reading this chapter, I started making decisions differently. I started asking, does this decision give me more control over my time or less? Does this purchase make me more free or more trapped? And that single filter, does this increase my freedom, has been the most valuable financial tool I've ever used. Because once you optimize for freedom, everything else falls into place. There are 3 takeaways from this chapter. First, define wealth as options, not objects. The next time you think about what being wealthy means to you, don't think about what you'd buy. Think about what you'd do. Would you sleep in, travel for a month, start a passion project, spend more time with your parents? That's real wealth. Start building toward that. Second, calculate the true cost of your income. Your salary isn't free. You pay for it with time, stress, health, and missed moments. Before chasing a raise or a promotion, ask, what am I giving up? And is what I'm giving up worth more than what I'm getting? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's not. But you should always ask. Third, build a freedom fund. Not just an emergency fund, a freedom fund. Money set aside specifically to give you options. Enough to take 6 months off, enough to switch careers, enough to say no to a bad boss. This isn't retirement savings. This is I choose my own life savings. And it might be the most important account you ever open. That's Chapter 7, Freedom. The chapter that asks you to stop and think that in the race to earn more, are you losing the very thing that money is supposed to buy? In the next video, we'll cover Chapter 8, Man in the Car Paradox, and it answers a question you've probably never thought to ask. When you see someone driving a Ferrari, do you admire the driver or do you just admire the car? Like this video if it made you pause and think about your own relationship with money and time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. And I have a genuine question for the comments. If money were no object, what would you do with your Tuesday afternoon? Not your vacation. A random Tuesday. That answer will tell you a lot about what you really want from life. See you in the next one.